Okay. Can everybody hear me okay? Okay. So hello to both our live audience as well as those joining us on live stream. Welcome to Into the Light, a talk hosted by Benedictine chapter of Catholic Relief Services University. My name is Miriam Miller, and I'm the president of CRSU on campus. Catholic Relief Services is an organization dedicated to promoting the sacredness of human life and upholding the dignity of the human person. And we do that through work with both impoverished and disadvantaged people throughout the world. One of our 4 pillars is human trafficking, and we're so blessed to have Hasna Sal and Robin Potter here with us tonight to speak to this subject. Before we continue, I'd like to open us in prayer. Father, Son, Holy Spirit. Come, Holy Spirit, come open us to the wonder, beauty, and dignity of the diversity found in each face and in each experience we have of the other among us. Come heal the divisions that keep us from seeing the face of Christ in all men, women, and children. Come bring us understanding, inspiration, wisdom, and the courage needed to embrace change and stay on the journey. Come, Holy Spirit, show us the way. Amen. St. Augustine once said, "Do not grieve or complain that you were born in a time when you could no longer see God in the flesh. He did not, in fact, take this privilege from you. As he says, whatever you have done to the least of my brothers, you did to me." This quote beautifully captures the mission of Social Justice Week. And as Catholics, social justice is a wonderful part of our faith, as we are offered the opportunity to pour out hope and love to our brothers and sisters in Christ. The last event of Social Justice Week is tomorrow afternoon at 4:15 in the McAllister Boardroom on the 4th floor of Farrell Academic Center, and Glenn North will be giving his talk to make a poet black and bid him sing. I strongly encourage you to participate in this event that's being put on by the MLK Day Committee and the Black Student Union. Tonight we have with us Hasna Sal, an artist who has been living in Kansas since 2002, but has previously studied in England, Wales, and Boston. Hasna completed a 5-year professional degree program in architecture and urban design before moving to Kansas, where she worked as an architect and taught design studio at the University of Kansas. In 2004, she encountered a new frontier in her career, the craft of glass sculptures. Hasna attended Harvard for a postgraduate degree in landscape architecture in 2010, and at Harvard, she developed a greater understanding of the natural world and began to translate her observations into sculptural forms. She describes her art as a cornucopia of planes, textures, moods, emotions, morality, and chaos. But perhaps most importantly, she understands her sculptures as the voice of color. Hasna sees color as a fundamental part of the human spirit, as it alleviates, invigorates, and humanizes all of us. We are lucky enough to have one of Hasna's pieces in the Social Justice Week art show, so I highly encourage you to stop by Bishop Fink and check that out. We also have with us Robin Potter, who is herself a survivor of human trafficking. Robin has spoken with Hasna several times, sharing both her own experience as well as what Hasna's work has meant to both her and other survivors. So without further ado, let's warmly welcome both Hasna and Robin to Benedictine College.
Hello, everyone. Thank you for being here this evening. My name is Hasna Sal. I want to thank Benedictine College, Meredith Doyle, Miriam, for this beautiful introduction. My friend, survivor, my muse, Robin Potter, and everyone who's here today this evening. I know you have many places to be, and I'm just very grateful to you for coming and listening to our talk about the first memorial, exterior memorial in our nation on human trafficking. And here is a pioneer who helped facilitate that to be, Robin Potter.
Hi, thank you for having me to first start off. But I'm just going to start and I'm going to tell you my story. Well, my name's Robin. I'm a mother of, I have 5 children, but with me I have, is it on? Eddie, is it on? Yeah, I want to make sure they can. Testing. 1, 2. Oh. Thanks. Okay. So I have 5 children. I have
a son. I have 4 daughters that are with me. I have Nevaeh, who is 11. I have Sabina, who's 6, Lisa, who's 4, and I just had a daughter 3 weeks ago. So I'm going to just start from the beginning and just tell you my story. So my entire life, I come from abuse. I come from drug addiction. My parents were drug addicts. I was starting at the age of 5. I started getting raped by my older brother. At the age of 12, my best friend's grandpa raped me, and my parents were paid off from me to recant my story from the police. At the age of 15, my parents introduced me to methamphetamine because they said that us kids could find it better than they could. So that's what I got for my 15th birthday. At 16, I had my son, which I no longer have. I put him up for adoption because his father that I had met was a crack cocaine addict, a meth addict. And when I had my son, I was, again, 16. I had nowhere to go. I wasn't living with my family because, again, I ran away from them. So I decided to put my son up for adoption because I didn't want him to grow up like I did. And so a family that I knew adopted him. At 16, when I gave my son up for adoption, my life was just completely downhill. Like I said, I had no family. I had nobody. I had a drug addiction. I met a guy that promised that he would take care of me. He would put me under a roof. He took me shopping. And I always tell everybody that nothing in life is free. That's the day I was forced into prostitution on Independence Avenue. He owned me then. We'll pretty much say he owned me. So my days would consist of him telling me, there was 14 of us girls in one house, 14 men, because he would make sure that a man was out there watching us when we were on the corners. So my days would consist of being raped 5-6 times a day. He didn't care. We were forced right back out there to do it again. Turning tricks for night after night. We didn't get rest. We went until we couldn't anymore. By then, he had introduced me to crack cocaine, so that was the drug that I was doing. So he had me by a horn, especially when I became addicted to that. We were put on punishments if we didn't make enough money. We were forced to stand outside. I remember we had snowstorms like we did before, ice storms that we had like we just had last week. And if we got robbed or if we got raped and we came back with nothing in our pocket, he would make us stand outside. I remember standing outside for 2 hours at one time on the ice. He would call the punishment shoes, shirt, and shorts, and he would make us strip down to boxer shorts and a tank top and make us stand outside. I have cigarette burns from when we didn't bring in enough all over me. I have scars from jumping out of cars, going hundreds of miles an hour. I've been kidnapped. I've been tortured. I've had guns put in my face. I've been stabbed. Now, talking about my daughter, Nevaeh, let me just say, being out on the street, things happen, stuff like that. I ended up getting pregnant with my daughter, Nevaeh, my 11-year-old, when I was out on the street. That's my world. That little girl, that's my rock. And I wouldn't trade I wouldn't trade this little girl for nothing. That little girl is what saved my life. I found out I was pregnant with her when I was 14 weeks pregnant, and I knew I had to do something different. So when I found out I was pregnant with her, I got away for a minute, but then I ended up running back into my mom and started getting high again. My mom knew I was out on Independence Avenue. I was getting high with my mom. I was smoking crack with my mom. I ended up going to jail, and I remember the DFS worker coming in and saying, like, Robin, you need to pack your child up and you need to go. So I packed my daughter up that same day I got out of jail, and I packed up my daughter, and me and her went to treatment together. We went to a facility for 35 days together. She was 15 months old at the time. After that, we ended up going to a transitional living place, because I knew I couldn't go back to the same situations. I had to change everything in order to stay clean for her. I had already given up a son. I couldn't do it again. And this time I got to be a mom. So me and my daughter, we went to a transitional living for 2 years together, 2 years, 5 days together. Again, this is why I say this little girl is my rock. My daughter is 11 years old. You know, we've been through everything. I finally got to where I now live in my own home. For the first time, I have an actual job. Like, I get to pay, you know, I filed for the very first time in my life, I filed taxes. You know, I framed my very first paycheck. I never got to do this before. I never got to do none of this stuff before. And I tell people, you know, my daughter's 11, and here recently she's been asking, you know, she sees other people with their dads, and she sees my youngest with their dads, and she's like, Mom, who is my dad? And it's like, how do I explain to my child that you could be thousands of men out there, hundreds of men out there you could be because of a rape? How do you explain that to your child? My family, you know, my daughter has been called a trick baby. That's what my dad calls her to her face. That's why we haven't seen him. I've been called a crackhead. I've been called a prostitute. I've been spit on because that's what people see is that junkie. And so now, you know, I actually have a job. I work at PCs for People. I get to help the community by taking old computers and making them new. And I met Hasna at the walk. I did a walk because I wanted to take back my power because I felt like Independence Avenue still owned me. I felt like they still controlled me. I felt like I couldn't get out and walk or go play at the park with my daughters because I felt like that word prostitute was wrote on my back. So I started a walk because I wanted to take back my power. I wanted to show Independence Avenue, you didn't beat me, I beat you. You didn't win, I won. I have, you know, daughters that look up to me. For the longest, I couldn't look in the mirror because I would see just nothing but disgust in myself. When I met Hasna and I learned about the Into the Light, that was the very first, it was when we did the walkthrough after talking with her, and then us girls, us survivors, we got to walk through the park. And I still walk through that to this day. My daughters know what it represents because my daughters know, especially my 11-year-old, again, because my family will tell her, she knows that her mommy had an addiction. I have literally had to sit down and explain to what these are to my 11-year-old daughter because of other people telling her what it is. And so with this Into the Light, I never was able to put mirrors up in my house. I was never able to look at my reflection. I hated my reflection. I hated it. I despised it. I couldn't understand how I could just be still here. So many women have died on Independence Avenue. They're not coming back. They've died in horrific ways. They've died to where nobody knows. I've had friends that are still laying in the morgue because nobody will claim their body. And for the Into the Light, I now am able to put mirrors up. I don't see that prostitute. I don't see that junkie. I don't see that waste of space, that waste of breath. Hasna and the Into the Light gave me back my reflection. It gave me back my beauty. And now I can look in a mirror and I see a mother. I see a friend. I see a survivor. I don't see a victim. I don't see a prostitute. I don't see a junkie. I get to take my daughters and I get to play with them at parks and I get to live that normal life that a lot of women that I was out there with didn't. And this memorial to me is what gave that back to me. That is like the beginning. Like I said, I can finally see that Robin again. I can see my reflection and I see the beauty that I have. Not only on the inside out, I've got mirrors up in my house. I've not been able to ever put a mirror up in my house. And now me and my daughters have mirrors in our house. We have mirrors that tell us, we write our quotes on them each day. I make sure that I tell my daughters, because not once in my life was I hugged by a family member unless it was rape. Not once was I kissed or, told I'm proud of you by a family member unless it was being raped. And so I make sure every day that I get up, I look at my daughters and I say, I love you, and I'm so proud of you. Even if they have bad days, I tell them, or if they get a bad grade, you know what, it's okay. We can all make mistakes. We're just going to do better next time. And I get to do that with my little girls. because I can't imagine. I know the evil that lurks in this world. I know the evil that lurks out there. And I could never imagine one of my little girls out there on Independence Avenue or 40 Highway where I used to walk, or the motels that I was forced to work out of. And so every day I fight for them. And I just want other people to see me, that before, when you would see me out there, you wouldn't recognize the person I am today, because people think that's just a waste of space, that's a junkie. She doesn't matter. I want people to understand that we are human beings. I didn't blow out my birthday candles and say, I wish to grow up to be a prostitute. I had dreams, I had goals, but I was dealt the wrong hand. I had family members that was raping me starting at the age of 5. So every woman out there has a story. There's women out there that were doctors that just ran away from abusive relationships, and that's all they could get to because of men, taking control over them. There's so many good women out there, and I just want people to understand that we do matter. I matter to somebody. I matter to, everybody. We are human beings. Like, it's just some of us were not dealt the right cards. And for Hasna to do this, even women now, I've seen women that are still out in the life are seeing these, they're walking through and they're saying, what is that? And when you tell them what that is, and especially that a woman did that for us, that right there, because we've let men abuse us so much. We've had women abuse us, because they think that we're just nothing. And for this woman to do that for us, I know that's what saved my life. And I can't wait to grow up, or my kids to grow up, and explain and show them more. I can't wait for my 3-week-old daughter to walk through that park hand in hand with me. I walk with my 3 daughters. We walk hand in hand. And my daughter, they'll ask, what is that? And I get to say, that right there is what saved your mommy. That's what's saving your mommy every day. And so I'm just eternally grateful for this, because even the women that are still out there, they see that gives somebody hope like it gives me. Every day is a fight for me. My addiction, everything, it's not an easy battle. And so when I'm having a rough day, I can walk through that park and I can say, you got this, Robin, you can do this. That's exactly what I do when I start to get triggered, or my anxiety will get up. And it's right there where I used to be forced to prostitute. But I get to walk through that park with my head held high, and I say, you know what? You got this, Robin. And that's because of Hasna. I don't know, that is just that saves me every day. And so I just want to thank you all for listening to my story. And just, if you see somebody struggling, or if you see a girl, maybe one day when you're out and about, or, when you've gotten out of here in the city, just know that is somebody's mom. That is somebody's sister. Remember, she is a human being. And that one smile from you, that one hello from you, trust me, that goes a long way for us women that are out there. That's what keeps us fighting every day. Thank you.
Matthew, can you play that video, please?
I believe that my work should have a meaning, it should have a message, it should say something that brings good in this world. Every time I go to museums, I see a lot of negativity, and that's not who I am. Believe in spreading love and kindness and following the path
Like there are people from India, Pakistan, Asia, Africa, and all over the world, people come together and their class started teaching them how you become a culturally competent. Which means the more I understand my culture, then I will have to respect other culture.
The beauty about this culture is that ever since I made it, it's just been bringing me all the nicest people in the world. Everybody who I meet, I'm just awed or honored or just spellbound.
The reason I wanted to show this video in the beginning is because exactly like I said in the video, I feel that Christ brought Robin to me. I created this work 5 years ago out of the blue, one fine morning, not knowing why. It was not a commissioned work. It was just a work that I had to do. And I don't know who the artists are over here, but I'm sure you'll relate. I said, I have commissioned work waiting for me. I need to do that. But I couldn't. And I just sat in my studio for days on end, and nothing came to me. Finally, I said, you know what? I'm going to do this. And so I created this sculpture. It's about 10 feet, 11 inches tall, and about 9 feet wide, 2 feet in depth. Huge. And we presented this at St. Catherine of Siena Church, and literally a few miles from there is when the first survivor walked into my life. And it was as if I was being asked that you've created this work and you are professing that Christ loves all and Christ protects everyone, and you're here on earth to do the work of Christ. Then now what are you going to do about this? And I felt like I didn't have a choice. But so true is the fact that because of this installation, all the nicest, the most true and honest people have come into my life. Like when I see someone like Robin, she puts herself out there. There are no layers. She's just who she is, and no apologies. She's honest and pure, and she's one of the greatest mothers that I have ever had the fortune to see. And so, in fact, she inspires me. She inspires me to be better every single day. She inspires me to work harder. And every time I hit a spot where I'm like, I can't go any further, I just have to think about women like her, like particularly like Robin, and I feel like anything is within my grasp. I can do anything under the sun, because if Robin can do this, it's not that hard. She has been through the worst, and she has survived, and I'm just in awe of her. Thank you, Robin, for sharing your story. Every time you say this, it brings a tear to my eye. It brings joy to my heart that I was able to help you even a little bit. But it's just, you are a true hero in my eyes, and you always will be. I had a very normal, very protected childhood, and I never knew any of this. So when all this came into my life, I came to know that there is a place in Kansas City called Hooker Hill, and I went there, and you could see these criminal activities in daylight, like in front of you. I was shocked, and I didn't know how to express myself, and to figure things out, I would resort to art and to poetry, and here is some ruminations of what I've done so far. national anthem, land of the brave, home of the brave, land of the free. We have to ask ourselves that question. Is it really the land of the free? Human trafficking is the second largest crime in the world. United States is the highest consumer of human trafficking. More than 50% of the victims of trafficking are children. The average age is between 11 and 13 years of age. This is why Robin is saying that she got herself out there and she's working so hard so her little babies, her daughters don't suffer that same fate. I am worried too. Every mother should be. This is a pandemic of sorts because it can affect anyone and everyone, and yet there are so many people who are oblivious of this fact, true and honest fact. It is a money-making business by a nefarious few taking advantage of victims, young children caught in the web of poverty, addiction, and sex trafficking. Missouri ranks seventh in the nation. Kansas ranks 16th. That's how high we are. And less than 1% of the victims survive. Less than 1%. That's why when I first met Robin, like she was crying for her friends who had passed away, who she knew so well. And when I said to her, I came to her because, you know, I'm an architect and I work with numbers. So I was like, what number did you say? And she was like, Hasna, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter about the numbers because there are so many unreported cases, so many unreported. So numbers mean nothing to me. And she's so right. Why is it that that this is happening in our state? So what I've been given to believe is because we being in the center of the country and with all those, the highways, all the roads going, the interstate, look at that mesh over there. So we have, California is ranked first, Florida second, Texas third. So, you know, down from Fort Worth, all those become corridors. Independence Avenue is, in 1982 was, according to Kathy Barnes, it is the second, it was the second most dangerous street in the country. So there are two types of workers in this business, the indoor workers and the outdoor workers. The outdoor workers are those who are on the street. The indoor workers are those in massage parlors and, you know, casinos. 40% of them slapped, punched, kicked. Did I tell you, Robin, I was actually there one day taking measurements and I saw this young lady, maybe 16, 17 years old, and she was gathering her things. A pimp obviously brought her to Lycans Park and he was dropping her off. And she didn't gather her things fast enough because he kicked her and she fell out of the truck and her shoe went flying. And it was, you know, human beings being treated worse than animals. It's just, I wanted to show this picture because Robin put these up on Facebook. These are Robin's friends, Amanda and Maj, and they passed away in the last couple of years. This is another another victim who also passed away. This young lady caught my attention as well. She's from Houston. She was in school. She's a middle schooler, and she was kidnapped from her house. She was sold to trafficking. 2 years later, somehow she found her way back, and then the censure she received from the community. And this is the other part about it that I just don't get, that somebody is selling someone. Somebody is taking use of that person. Why is that person in the middle being the object of criticism and ridicule and, you know, I mean, what about the other two? They are scot-free. And, you know, she's the one who gets all the abuse. I have heard so many times from people that they bring it on themselves. You tell me, you're closer to 11 to 13 years of age than I am, but can you even imagine what you were like at 11, 13 years of age, 15 years of age? Gosh, I would take 10 minutes to even think about what I'm going to wear. Like, and my clothes were all over the place, and and here these young kids are making decisions. They're running away from abusive homes, and we are criticizing them. We are ostracizing them from community for that. Independence Plaza Park, this is the notorious place in Kansas City. Robin has a story or two, right, Robin? This is the park. Yeah, yeah. Yeah. I had a survivor say to me that they wouldn't bathe for ends and for a long time, and then they would come here to this fountain, and this is where they would bathe at like 3, 4 in the morning when no one is watching. This is the steps right across from Lycans Park where I see all the drop off and pick up happen, right? So this is Lycans Square Park. Anytime I've been there, at least I've seen all of these things happen even now. So, and look at this park. It is so beautiful. It's like, it's picture perfect for someone who doesn't know what's going on. It looks like a great place for children to play, except I was there in the afternoon in 2019 and 2020, and there was not a single child over there in that park. So then I came to know that there's a revitalization project happening, the Lycans Revitalization Project, where all these 5 associations were coming together to revitalize the place. And I used to work for Habitat for Humanity before, and and this is a project that we had built way back in 2010, and this is what it looks like now. So I realized, just like human beings, even places need a connection. They need a point of connectivity. So how do you give people a sense of belonging? How do you give people a sense of place? It should not only be a sense of belonging, but it should be a place of pride. And then I went around looking at examples, precedents for what is there in the city. So Statue of Liberty, right? Like when I was studying in England, and Statue of Liberty, we had to, studying fine art, we had to draw this so many times. It's such a iconic symbol. Back in Kansas City, the sculptures that you have here at the plaza, a Thinker by Rodin, at the Nelson Atkins, the Crying Agent at the Kemper Museum, and then the dancing children, the shuttlecock. So every place has some form of public art that connects or does not connect to a place. The shuttlecocks does, it doesn't really have an associative influence. However, it's just there and it has its own significance. But this place over here really connected with me. This is the Holocaust Memorial in Boston, and very close to the college that I went to. And so I would walk by here, and it really connected with me because the glass had numbers for all the survivors. So you walk through these 5 chambers, and then you see the numbers, and it's almost like the survivor is there with you. The survivor is a part of your life, that he or she is acknowledging that you are giving her or him the homage. It's a very powerful work, and that's the lettering over there, etched in glass. And this is such a nice saying. It says, they came first for the communists, and I didn't speak up because I was not a communist. Then they came for the Jews, and I did not speak up because I wasn't a Jew. Then they came for the trade unionists, and I did not speak up because I wasn't a trade unionist. Then they came for the Catholics, and I did not speak up because I was a Protestant. Then they came for me, but by that time, there was no one left to speak up. It was such a powerful line for me, because if you don't speak up for those who are underprivileged and marginalized, if you think that you are separate from them, at some point, it's going to come and become a part of your life too, because that is the nature of crime. It just wants to perpetuate into every division that it can get. It's like a cancer in the city. It needs to be taken down, or it will completely destroy you. So back to Lycans Park, I feel like this is a cancer that's growing in our city, and it's affecting our kids. It's affecting so many generations. And when I came over here, I saw these steps that lead down into the park. And I said, okay, let me just go and take a look. And this is what I saw. The graffiti on the wall, stop them, help me. It's like the victims were connecting with me across space and time. I don't even know who wrote them, but it was just, those moments in life where you have, these symbols, these kind of spiritual moments when you don't even know how these things happen. It's like orchestrated cosmically, and that's how I felt. The next time I went there, it was washed away, by the way. You can't see it anymore. But it was there on that day that I went in April of 2019. So this is the park. Look how beautiful it is. Look at that playground over there. This is around May time. Not a single child. Not a single child in that park. So then I was reminded of this Japanese journey of spirituality, where you go into the forest and you lose yourself and there's no one there, and it's just you and nature and communion with God and light, and it just I imagined that as I was standing at Lycans Park. And thus, I came up with this design for this installation. The park is wide enough and the pathway is narrow enough that one could just walk by themselves and engage with that space and connect with the story. And so this is what I wanted to put up. And for me, even the angle was so important, because I wanted to put it high as I could, except wind speed. You have to put it at 15 feet or lower, otherwise you're hit with wind force and it could destroy the glass. That's a lot of tension on the glass. So you have to be below. But, looking up at the work, paying homage to the work was very symbolic to me. The first panel is isolation, where she is subdued. In Robin's case, you all heard how she was. In other cases, I know of victims whose husbands have abused them and they were not able to speak up. I've heard of friends who've done that, pretend, or rather so-called friends. So it always starts with a child not being able to communicate her problems with an adult. Or if she does, then she gets slapped, rebuked, and quietened. And so she lands up in the wrong hands. She lands in the hands of the pimp. Matthew, it's not working. Okay. So this slide is, if you, in the back, there is a person. So that person is watching. It's symbolic of us, that we are watching, but we're not doing anything. And she's in the pimp's hands. Here is our fountains, the fountains that we are so proud of, but they are objects of sustenance, of livelihood for victims who come and bathe in it to keep away disease when we are all fast asleep, comfortable in our warm beds. And then in the third panel, she turns. For me, in this, the maquette, she turns to Christ, or she turns to the pastor, and her life gets turned around. And that was just my narrative. It could be anyone. Like, I have friends who really found it within themselves. Or for Robin, it was motherhood. It was Nivea. It's just, she was her strength. So it could be anybody, but that's just symbolic, that hand reaching out. And then finally, in panel 4, she's found salvation. She's inside her home. And this is what the victims say to me all the time. The survivors say, like, we just want security. We want a home. It's not about family. It's not about luxury. It's not about a car or, holidays. They want security. They want a home, the basic need that a human being can get. So this memorial is for victims of human trafficking and for those who minister to them. It is also to confront those who are perpetrating this crime, and it is to offer hope for those who are still caught in the vicious cycles of poverty, addiction, and sex trafficking. And it is a triumph of hope and redemption, and the binding together of communities, past, present, and future. So thank you, Benedictine College. Thank you to the students of Benedictine College. Thank you to Meredith Doyle. Thank you, Miriam. Thank you, Brian Parks. Thank you to the art department. Thank you to my dear friend, my muse, my hero, Robin Potter. Thank you to Nate for bringing here today. Thank you for my investor and my business partner, Dr. Paniker. And just now, it's up to you. We are doing what we can in our generation, and the world is up to you to create your mark and make this world a better place for your following generations. Thank you.
Okay, we'll take some questions right now. So if you have a question, just raise your hand and I'll come over to you with the mic.
The panels, yes. How long did it take for me to make the panels? That's a really good question. So the panels took me about 6 months. And the reason for that is I would make the panels, and then when you work with glass, it's 5% art and 95% science. So sketching takes like few minutes, and then it's about figuring heat shelf, thermodynamics, the just so many factors, the coefficient of efficiency. There's so many things, but I've been doing this for about 20 years, but I have not worked to this scale. So there were moments where I would just make it and it would, be perfect, and step by step. There are so many mistakes, and then there were points where it's all done. It would take about 6 weeks to make it, and I'm taking it out of the kiln, and boom, it would just break. And then there goes that, and then I start again. And there was one moment where I created the work, and it was waiting for it to be picked up. And then while it was picked up, right there it broke. So it was a really long, arduous journey, just burning and bleeding, just, because glass is like that, right? I mean, it's a very unforgiving medium. But at the end of it, after doing a lot of calculations, changing it and things, I think I finally figured out how to get those calculations right. And so this is the work that came. But yeah, it actually, the work itself, the panels that you see, would probably have taken about 2.5 to 3 months, but the process of figuring it out took twice the time.
I was kind of wondering, like, what does it look like for a victim to become a survivor, and like the after kind of process of that? If you could talk a little more about that.
So for me, every day is going from victim to survivor. Is that what you mean? Okay, so every day is still a struggle for me. Again, for the longest, I felt like I had the word prostitute wrote on my back. I would go and go to walk to the store or something, or even being out and going on a walk with my daughter Nevaeh. I felt like cars were looking at me. I felt like everybody was looking at me, like everybody's seen me. Um, but like I said, I felt like that word prostitute was just wrote on me. Um, every day is still, it's a struggle. I wear my coin around my neck, especially because all over the city that I'm in now, every spot I've been raped in, I've been tortured in. There's buildings that I was right next to my daughter's daycare that I was tortured in. So every day is a struggle for me. Um, it was very hard in the beginning. Like when I got my first job, my actual job, I was like, okay, now what do I do? I don't feel like I fit in here. But it's learning things. I feel like I'm starting over. I'm learning everything new. Everything is new to me. Even I'm 35 years old. I'll be 35 this year. And I'm learning stuff that you guys have probably already learned. It's starting over. You're pretty much starting from scratch. It's like learning how to walk again. It's learning how to deal with society. It's learning how to be normal. For so many years, when you're out walking the streets, you feel like nobody sees you, like you're nothing to nobody. And when now people see me, and I'm learning how to deal with that. I'm learning how I have things that I have to deal with every day. PTSD, certain smells, like certain colognes can trigger something. Um, I've run, I've been at the, let's say I went to the store, my daughter was very young, Nevaeh was very young. And I remember going to a store, and a lot of girls, we would call them clients or we would call them tricks. And I remember a guy that I turned dates with on a regular basis, he would be like, oh my gosh, it's you. And this was a guy that paid me for sex, and here's my daughter standing right there. And, or you run into officers, that used to run into you out on the street that you would turn tricks with, and they're like, they see you, but they see this person that's doing better, and you run into people that you used to get high with out on the streets, like the men that would be out there, because the men out there, they're hungry for us women out there. They would use us women because they seen us as money, and you would run into them. Like I said, I would go, I can go out. I was well known. My middle name, when I would hear my street name, which is my middle name, I would cringe because, again, I have little girls. I don't want people from my past to, I worry about that every day with my little girls. Like, what if somebody was, it takes 1 second for somebody to trick my daughter into running away. As, Nevaeh's turning 11, and she's going through, that stage of, I want to know who my dad is and things. And so every day it's a struggle for me. Like I have to, it's, it's not easy, but I'm proud of myself because I get to sit here in front of you guys and I get to tell you about where I'm from. Again, a lot of women don't get to tell their story. Their families don't get to know what happened to them. Um, I've watched so much stuff, you know, growing up and things like that. So I get to do better for my daughters. You know, I get to do better for myself. Um, going, when I was out there for the longest, again, like I said, I couldn't look in that mirror and I couldn't see myself. I couldn't see that reflection because you feel dirty because it's hundreds of men you're forced to do this with a night. You know, if you don't make enough, you're back out there. He would make us go right back out there. So it's a lot of things I have to learn to deal with, especially being sober. You have to learn how to deal with the disgust that you feel inside yourself. You have to tell yourself every day it's okay, it's not your fault. It's not something that, you know, you would take, like for me, it would be taking showers and scrubbing so hard to where I would bleed because I just wanted it to just get out of me. But for me, I get to learn to love again. I have somebody finally I've been with for 9 years that's teaching me that, you know, that doesn't look at my past as my past. He loves me for me and he tells me every day, Robin, you know what? That's your past. That doesn't define you. And so it's just learning how to take steps and how to just walk all over again, pretty much.
You talked about how kind of like one instance was like if someone just like walks by you and just gives you a smile while you're on the street or just says hi, how that like can be a big impact. Do you have like a personal story or some like instance like that you remember that you'd be willing to share or yeah?
Um, Again, like when you're out there on the streets, people don't see you and things like that. There's a group called Veronica's Voice that would come out there and they would talk to us women. They would give us brown bags. They would give us condoms. They gave us things because they knew that was things that would keep us safe. They also had this thing called the Bad Trick Book because, again, you get men that'll pick you up and a lot, if we was able to survive it, I don't know if you guys remember the Terry Blair thing that happened. Like, that's a guy that I survived. I got away from. But there was a lady that had came out there, and I remember I was down, I was out, and I begged God. I was like, please, like, just take me. Like, I couldn't understand why he just kept me going. Like, why was I even here? Why was I living? And I remember this lady from Veronica's Voice coming up, and she's like, can I pray with you? And I remember her sitting on the steps, those steps, and I remember her just praying over me. And I don't think I cried tears like that, just because for the first time I felt like somebody actually seen me. My entire life was abuse, so I knew how to isolate myself from people. I knew how to disassociate people. And the lady that I remember, I can't remember her name, but she was from an organization called Veronica's Voice that helps, you know, women out there that are stuck out there. And just that prayer, it was that prayer, her saying, can I pray with you? And her hugging me and telling me that, you know what, it's okay. I understand, or telling me that I matter. That's what really helped. Or, again, just seeing somebody smiling at me or somebody telling me, you know, Hasna, like, when I met Hasna, I was still struggling because I was still seeing, even the day of the walk, like I was scared to death. I hadn't been out on the Independence Avenue in 10 years. But it was just seeing people that wasn't from that lifestyle saying, you know what, you matter to me. And that was all it took for me to just keep fighting. It's just somebody saying, hey, you know what, I understand that you are going through this and this is the lifestyle you have, but you matter to me. Because again, these men make you feel like you're nothing, you're replaceable. And women will tell you, you know, I've had guns pointed at me or like put up to me by women because of the men that are picking us up out there. It's their husbands picking us up. And it's not, like we don't know that they're married. I've had men pick me up that would have their babies in the back seat of the car asleep. You know, detectives that pick you up and tell you, you know, you sleep with me, I won't arrest you tonight. So, I mean, it's all kinds of things that you go through out there. And for somebody to say, hey, you know what? You're beautiful to me. You matter to me. Just your smile alone will help a woman so much. Trust me, because I know that's what helps me daily.
Okay, well, we're just about at time, so why don't we give a round of applause to Hosna and Robin. I have one more thing for you guys. Meredith got these. Thank you guys so much, and thank you all for coming, and have a great night.